people keep saying that by the time this pandemic is over, it's likely that we'll all have lost someone. Know someone who's lost someone. Someone will be gone from our lives. So tonight, I dedicate this story time to someone I have not seen in decades. But when I found out yesterday that he'd been claimed by COVID-19, I felt the loss. And I think that that is a tremendous thing to say about someone. Adolfo Dimartino, a chef from Long Beach Island, New Jersey, attendee of Harvard and the Sorbonne, father to Uli. My ex-husband and I had met Adolfo not long after we were married, so 31 years ago. And he and Rita ran a place called the Green Gables, and it was a bed and breakfast with the most spectacular restaurant. And so I haven't seen Adolfo or Rita since we left on our sailboat after the birth of our first son, Zoltan. But I will never, ever forget them or Uli or that experience. Because it's hard to forget someone who can make you eat squid ink pasta. And so I wanted to open tonight with a little story about this very unique man. At his restaurant at Green Gables, he would take your reservation. He would ask you if you were allergic to anything. And then he would proceed to tell you that the menu was fixed. And he would also ask you if there's any food that you hated, you absolutely would not eat if it were placed in front of you. And we made the mistake of telling him this. I didn't really have a food that I hated. My ex had broccoli, I think, may have been Brussels sprouts, one of those two foods. So by the end of that meal, of course, one of the courses was absolutely laced with what my ex hated. And for me, he brought something that I was sure I was never going to eat, which was black ravioli made from squid ink. And he said, here you go. And it was one of the best meals I think either of us has ever had the privilege to eat. And there's a certain kind of person who can know with absolute certainty that they have the skill, the bravado, and can pull off feeding people something that they hate and making them love it. And that's what sticks with me about Adolfo, I think, and the experience of having met him, because I think it's a tremendous gift to get people to love what they hate. I mean, it's easy to get people to hate. I mean, just look around, that's so easy. But how do you get somebody to love something that they hate? I wonder these days how to get people to love people that they hate, even people they haven't met that they hate anyway. So these are two stories that I chose because they're a little bit about regret, because I do regret not having stayed in touch with him. I feel like there was a lot I would have learned. He would have driven me completely mad. We would have fought like two cats in a barrel. But I would have learned a lot. So the first one is called Something Fishy About Anger. In the shallow, muddy waters of the big river, many fish swam and lived day to day in an easy way. Moss Carp had always been content with his place in life and happy with what he'd been given. He loved to play with the children, swam. They tossed him bits of bread and he tickled their ankles and made them laugh. But it happened one day that Moss just had a run of bad happenings. First, when he went out to root around in the mud for small shrimp and plant roots on which to feast, he was rudely shoved aside by a school of larger fish. Since almost any fish larger than himself could eat carp, Moss had run away. Then he was very angry and hungry. He was hungrier, and he became the angrier for it. When he swam back to his home amongst the loose rocks and water plants, he found himself under attack from a group of older boys. The boys splashed into the water and decided to pull out the weeds and rocks to clear a wading place. His home was destroyed and Moss was furious. He was so angry that he swam up and he tried to nip one of the boys on the toes, but since he didn't have any teeth, this only resulted in tickling the boy, which made him trip and stomp on Moss's tail. Now Moss swam crookedly away in fury. "Children," he snapped to himself, "oh, bad. I will never go near one of them again, never." He managed to find a new place farther down the river and settled in for the night. Moss remembered what his father had always told him: "Never go to sleep angry, my son. It will always make matters worse. Mend your feelings before you close your eyes or find yourself with a very sad surprise." But on this occasion, Moss was not able to mend his feelings. He was angry, and he wanted to stay that way. "I have been a very silly fish," he said to himself as he dozed off. "I have been too nice, and from now on, it's no more Mr. Nice Carp." As he slept, Moss dreamed terrible things. He dreamed of being chased by whales and stomped on by giants. He was so hungry that he dreamed about eating. But in his dreams, he could not find the delicious shrimp, but only found mouthfuls of nasty-tasting cold mud. Moss tossed and fussed in his sleep. And when he awoke, life seemed far worse than it had the day before. Though he swam right out and found all of the shrimp that he could eat and filled his belly until he was quite full, he was still unhappy. "Now my stomach hurts," he pouted. Even though he saw that his new home was far sunnier and warmer than the old one, with a better supply of food and fewer large fish to be afraid of, he was still quite miserable. "It's all strange and new," he said to himself. I hate this place. I hate this food. I hate my life. Life is awful." Day after day, Moss complained to any fish that he met. Night after night, he went to bed angry. Morning after morning, he woke in a worse and worse mood than the day before. One day, he was swimming along, muttering to himself about how it was too warm and bright to suit him, when he bumped straight into a big, fat old mirror carp named Cyprin. He was called a mirror carp because his sides were made up of rows of huge silver scales, instead of the tiny ones that other carp wore. Cyprin's sides flashed like lightning in the shallow, sunny water. Cyprin, too, was muttering and complaining to himself, not looking where he was going. He was more concerned with where he had been and how miserable it had all been there. Cyprin and Moss squared off against each other, ready to fight. "Out of the way, old thing," Moss said in a nasty voice. In answer, Cyprin butted Moss with his head, and the two came together again and again, butting and a-bumping and slapping each other with their tails. And the water around them just seemed to boil from the conflict. In the midst of all of this thrashing, a large round net sank down over them. And when the lead weights in the net hit the bottom, a line threaded through the net was drawn tight, and the net became a large sack, and it caught those two fish, and they were hoisted up into the air. The fish wriggled and gasped. Their captor was a tall, thin old man in a long brown robe with a rope for a belt, and his hair was white, and it circled his head like a wreath. He narrowed his eyes at the two fish, and to their everlasting surprise, he began to speak to them. I'll just wrap up the two of you in some wet lily pads. Sit you down here on the bank for a nice chat, he said to them, and so he did. With all of that bickering and carping you two were doing, you made quite the fine target, the old man said to the fish, so wrapped up in your own anger. You didn't even see the danger that was upon you, did you now? No, you did not. Moss was surprised to hear himself speak in a voice that the old man could understand. Well, I was just having a bad day, Moss said breathlessly. More than one, I suspect, said the old man. What's your excuse, old Cyprin? How long have you been angry? The old fish was suddenly surprised to find that he could not remember when he had begun to be angry at life. And then it came back to him in a flood of memory. Well, I was angry when my brother, because he was taking the last good shrimp. Cyprin said never did forgive him, not till the day he was caught and eaten. I stayed angry and it grew. The old man shook his head. Cyprin, please tell our young friend here how many years it was ago that your brother ate that shrimp that made y'all so angry. Now the old fish was very embarrassed. He felt sorry for all his angry days. He felt sorry for carrying on the way he had and staying angry with his only brother. The old man smiled down at him and he said, now the truth will set you free, old friend. Tell him how long it's been. Cyprin understood and he answered, well, that will be around about 305 years come next April. I'm sorry for it now, I'm so sorry. I thought as much, said the old man. Moss had stopped struggling and gasping when he heard this piece of information. He was so surprised that his mouth just hung open in a big O. The old man took Cyprin and unwrapped the leaf that held him, and he dipped the old fish into the water and he held him up in front of Moss. And the old man said, now look at yourself. Do you see yourself in this old fish? Moss saw just how awful he looked. He saw that his eyes had become hard and flat and angry, and his jaw set and his scales dark and ugly. He looked closer and he saw himself in that old fish of 300 years or more, still angry and mean. Satisfied, the old man dropped Cyprin back into the water. Well, will you release me too? Moss asked. Release yourself, said the old man. You have the power now. You just shake off that anger and you're going to be free. Moss thought about the things that made him so angry. He promised himself never to go to sleep without mending his feelings first. Suddenly, he felt that tight wrapping of the wet leaf slip away and he slid into the warm water again. The old man waded in and he said, now, remember now, my friend, your kind has been gifted with a long life. Don't you throw away that gift on anger, as so many are prone to do. Find instead ways to be a lasting joy. Moss swam away and he spent all the rest of his many days tickling children's feet in the shallows and flashing them a bright golden light in the summer of all of their lives. Yep. Folks staying angry. Not the way to go these days, I think, maybe. So this final story is called Holiday. You know how in the summertime when they used to do the reruns on television, when we watched television and not Netflix, and you'd get to summer and all of a sudden you'd be watching all the Christmas specials, right? So we're kind of there with the Fables because this one's called Holiday. It was winter, and creatures great and small prepared for holiday time. This was one time in all the times when everyone stopped to find peace and remember joy. This was because the world was often a fast-paced and worrisome place where creatures too often forgot important things. One animal was always hunting, another always being hunted. Some spent all their days gathering. Still, the creatures always made it their practice to have this special time. Holiday existed as a safe space, when no one chased and no one ran, and all shared all that they had. Some chose for it to be one day. Others chose 3. Still others chose to make it an entire week for holiday time. They had not only to remember, but also to share their joy. This was done with gifts, songs, or sweet treats, or simply to share a smile or a kind word. It became a busy time of year, a time of planning feasts and gathering together. But no matter how long they chose to celebrate, all remembered to remember their joy. All remembered but one, Cricket. Cricket had always been known for her songs of joy, but lately Cricket began to think joy was like a beautiful and fragile glass ornament. It was to be handled gently on special occasions only and made a great fuss over. Now at holiday singing practice, Cricket was not handling anything or anyone gently, although she was making quite a fuss. "That was horrible! You are doing it all wrong," Cricket squeaked at a tree frog in the choir who had sung the wrong notes. "You aren't even trying. You sound like a pack of toads, all of you." All the singers hung their heads in sadness. "This is a song of joy," Cricket trilled. "You need to sound joyous." "Ugh, this is awful. Never mind. Everyone just go home. There will be no singing this year." Oh dear. One brave little bird asked, "Why don't you sing anymore, Cricket? When you used to sing with us instead of telling us what to do, it always sounded lovely." Cricket just made a sound like a rusty hinge. "I have nothing to sing about," Cricket said. "Besides, I'm too busy trying to help all of you." Everyone left and returned to the town. Where they would normally have carried joy in their hearts, they took with them sorrow and bitterness instead. Everywhere they went that day, they spread that sorrow and bitterness to all that they met. This had been going on for a long time. Cricket had met with Mr. Mouse, the baker, and when she tasted a sample of his cookies, she complained that they were not sweet enough. "Oh, I do hope that the ones you make for holiday are better than this," she said. "These would take the joy out of anyone's mouth." So had Cricket's bitter words taken the joy out of Mr. Mouse's cooking. It had also taken some of his confidence. Mr. Mouse decided then and there to leave the cooking to someone else that year. At the school where writer Rabbit was working on a story about holiday cheer, Cricket hopped in and looked over his shoulder. "Oh, Cricket," he said, I would be glad if you'd read my new story. I'm sure that it would make you smile to see how many good deeds that the children have done this year." Cricket hopped up onto the table and began to read. She was not past the first few lines when she began to say, "Oh dear, this will never do." Rabbit's whiskers drooped. What's the matter?" "Well, you certainly have not learned how to spell yet, have you?" she said in a sharp tone. "And this wording is all wrong." "Ugh," she sighed and huffed, made twitchy faces at Rabbit until he took all of the papers back. Rabbit said, "Oh, I see. Well then, I'll correct that. But what did you think of the story? Did the part about the little otter helping save the little mouse from the wild cat make you smile?" Cricket tisked again and shook her head. "Well, if that mouse had listened to her mother in the first place and not gone wandering, well, he wouldn't have needed saving at all, now would he? Very annoying tale indeed. Poor Rabbit." He just sighed and folded up the papers. I see your point," he said. I think I'll just go home now and try and come up with one that is better." "Very sound idea," said Cricket. And then she hopped out of the school and back down the lane. But of course, Rabbit had not written a new story. He'd gone home and given up. When Rabbit returned to school the next day to teach the young ones, He was in a very cross and critical mood and awful about all of their efforts. As a result, no holiday tales were written. Cricket did not realize what she had begun. In her mind, she'd been working hard to make things perfect, and the others had been lazy and not listening. And so it was that time passed away, and so did their joy. On one silent night, a songless, joyless eve, before holiday was to start, Cricket headed down the lane towards her home. As she passed through the town, she noted that there were very few decorations, and most creatures she met spoke very little to her, if at all. After all the work that I've done, it comes to this, she said aloud. Why do I bother? No one cares. Nobody cares. No. They only want the gifts and the noise. Nobody remembers the joy. At that moment, the wind blew through so hard that it knocked Cricket flat on her back and left her feet sprawling in the air. You certainly have forgotten your joy, Cricket, said the wind. Worse, you've made others forget theirs. Cricket was furious. She righted herself and brushed off the dirt. How dare you knock me down and tell me such terrible things, she said. And who do you think you are? I am the ill wind that blows no good. And you, madam, are no good to anyone this holiday season, the ill wind said. Then it blew harder and it flattened her again. How dare you knock down other creatures, spirits, and say such terrible things to them? The ill wind howled. Once you filled me with your songs, the wind said. It was my pleasure to carry your words and music far and wide, and now you've changed your tune. Say you've nothing to sing about. You make me sick at heart. So I've become the ill wind. Ill wind blew harder and harder until Cricket was pinned to the ground. Help! 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 Cricket shouted, but Wind took the words out of her mouth and threw them right back at her. Help? Ha! That is certainly what you need, the ill wind said. I could blow you so far away that you would never ever find your way back to this place, or better yet, I can take you away from all this and leave you here to see what you're missing. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. The ill wind blew colder and colder until Cricket began to freeze like a tiny statue. She was frozen in a block of ice. Cold as your heart has been, the wind said, so you shall be until you remember what is important in the holiday season. Then the ill wind vanished in a huff and a puff. It was not long before Cricket was discovered by some of the creatures that lived in the little town. Tree frogs, snails, mice, birds, and rabbits gathered around the little figure. Oh, look, said Tree Frog, the one that Cricket had shouted down during singing practice. Cricket thinks she's so perfect. She had a statue of herself made for the holiday. The others laughed. Some shook their heads. Inside the ice, Cricket's shame burned like a flame, but the ice didn't melt. Well, I suppose that she's going to be angry if we do not put this statue in the middle of the town square for all to see, said Baker Mouse. And they all agreed. So the creatures dragged the icy little block into the town square and left it there. Without the shrill voice of Cricket to fray nerves and poke holes in everyone's spirit, the joy began to return to the little town. Decorations were hung. The singers held a concert in the town square. And Cricket was not missed. Holiday came. Cricket saw all the creatures she had insulted, heard the music that had annoyed her. Now it sounded perfect. She began to wish that she hadn't been quite so critical. Oh, she was angry with herself. She was so busy being angry and sad that still she could not remember her joy. Seasons passed. The heat of summer failed to melt Cricket, for her spirit had frozen with the ice. One day, Writer Rabbit came to sit by her. This tale for you, Cricket, he told the statue, wherever you are. I hope that these words will find you. We miss your songs. He carried a few pages of paper that he began to read aloud. It was her story, a tale of someone who'd been dear to all, but who'd forgotten how to share and show her joy, and then lost it altogether. and finally had disappeared herself. Cricket's heart melted first, then her mind. In moments she stood before Rabbit as he blinked in shock. Rabbit began to hop up and down and shouted for everyone to come and see what had happened. All the creatures rushed to the square and were amazed to see Cricket standing in the place where the little block of ice had been. "Oh, Cricket," Rabbit said, "you were trapped in there all of this time. Can you forgive us for not trying to get you out?" Cricket looked around at all of the worried faces. "'Twas not your job for any of you," Cricket said. "It was my own cold ways that made the ill wind blow. Lock me in the ice, as cold as my heart. 'Twas, if you'll have me back, I promise I will be warmer and kinder." All gathered around Cricket to welcome her back. Cricket took Writer Rabbit's story called Something to Sing About, and she set it to music to thank everyone. She sang a song so warm and sweet it created a change in the wind. When she sang this new song, the wind of change picked it up and carried it far and wide to warm the hearts of those who had forgotten why they should find their joy in every day. I've been wondering a little bit as we've gone through Passover and Easter and now Ramadan, if someday, after all of this pandemic is over, if someday our country and all the countries of the earth will adopt a holiday in memory of this experience, and I wonder what that holiday will be, and whatever it is, it'll say a lot about those who celebrate it. Will it be a holiday of fasting? Will it be a holiday of feasting? Will it be a holiday of isolation and introspection? Will it be a holiday where we go out and hug every single person that we see? I'm going to go for the one where you hug every single person that you see and eat a lot of chocolate. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I hope that you all take a moment, now that you know a little bit about him, to remember our friend Adolfo Dimartino. Good night.